highlight some of the glands. Right under the mandible, there's a salivary gland. Here, salivary gland. And that salivary gland, we need to be able to identify. It is submandibular, under the mandible. There's one under the tongue, sublingual, and then there's one on the side. I'm just going to remove this person's head. There's one on the side, up here, and that one's called parotid. So you want to be able to identify the 3 different salivary glands.
Can you point to the parotid? I was looking at
Parotid.
of a different model.
Yeah. This one doesn't have it.
That one you can just see the salivary and the sublingual.
Yep. This one you can see parotid, sublingual, and sublingual and submandibular, under the mandible, under the tongue. Parotid's on the side. You're going to follow the esophagus all the way down to the stomach. The stomach has multiple regions you want to be familiar with. It's got a lesser curvature. It's got a greater curvature. The first part where the esophagus enters is called the cardiac portion. The bump on the side is called the fundus portion. Most of it is called the body. And then in this region it's called the pyloric region. This tightening, this constrictor, this sphincter, it's called the pyloric sphincter. It prevents fluid from the stomach from going into the duodenum to hurt or premature.
What prevents it from going in there?
Pyloric sphincter.
That's what that is.
And you'll notice all these little bumps and grooves in the body, in the fundus, in the pyloric region, and they're called rugae, right? So that the stomach can expand. It's got these little folds. Please make sure you look at the stomach. Oh, in addition, what do we say about the muscular layers in the stomach? There's 3 of them. 3 different layers. And it's highlighted in this model. There's a layer here, the oblique, then another layer here, circular and longitudinal. Oblique, circular, longitudinal.
How can you tell?
They're layered on top of each other.
So technically you're going by internal, external, because it's just different.
Yep, you're going internal most is oblique, then circular, then longitudinal. So it follows the same pattern. You just put the oblique in the innermost now. What else? We did teeth, we did the ducts, we did the stomach, esophagus, did the layers. This is a model that's been removed. So the stomach would sit up here, the large intestine would come across here, and the stomach would sit here, empty into the duodenum. From the duodenum, the 3 parts of the small intestine are duodenum, jejunum, ileum. It's hard on any of these models to name anything beyond the duodenum. That's the first part. The middle part is jejunum, and it could be anywhere in here. And then the last part here, and especially here, if I put the sticker on this end, that's ileum. The ileum meets up with the cecum, and there's a valve in between called the ileocecal valve. It prevents food or chyme from moving from the large intestine back into the small intestine. So you need to be aware of the ileocecal valve.
Is the ileum as small as the duodenum?
No, it's actually the duodenum is the shortest segment of the small intestine, then the jejunum, then the ileum.
Oh.
So the ileum is fairly long. So we've got the cecum, the appendix hanging off. We've got the ascending colon, the flexure, because the liver sits up here, we call that the hepatic flexure. Then the transverse would come across. We've got another flexure here, And because the spleen sits over here, we call it the splenic flexure. And we have the descending colon, and then this S-shaped part is the sigmoid colon.
Are you expecting us to know flexure because it's not on the lab?
Is it not on the list?
You are supposed to know if it's on the lab, if it's not on there. Yeah, it's on under large and small intestines. Okay, no, it's under splenic, here we go. Splenic and hepatic. So the first one going up is the splenic, and the one coming down is hepatic, or vice versa?
Well, the liver sits here, so this flexure is hepatic. The spleen sits here, so this flexure is splenic.
Okay.
I won't call them left or right. I'll just call them hepatic or splenic.
Splenic.
Yep. Now, one of the features of the large intestine is there's a band of muscles that run up and through the large intestine. That band of muscles are called tenae coli. And the tenae coli contract, and when they do, they force portions of the large intestine to pucker up into little pockets. And each of these pockets is called the haustra. So if I put a sticker on this long linear region, then that's tenae coli. If I put it on one of these little pouches, that's haustra. If I put it down here in the S-shaped portion, that's sigmoid colon. If it's here, that's descending colon. Here, ascending colon, and then there's another one that runs across, which is
What's
transverse.
the tinea coli?
Tinea coli are smooth muscle bands, usually 3 muscles.
Can you see it on the?
It's these bands right here.
Those 3 going longitudinally, I mean up and
Yep,
down.
they come up, they go around, they come down.
And then one little tiny thing is the haustra.
Yep, each one of these little pockets or pouches is a haustra. There's lots of them. When the tinea coli contract, they move the haustra around. And they cause the haustra to change directions.
So is the large intestine where people get diverticulitis?
Yep,
with that
usually in the left
haustra?
side over here.
Okay.
Is that when they just like bunch up and it gets infected?
No, diverticulitis is when an actual pouch forms and it extends into the large intestine. So it's an extension of the mucosa, and it forms a dead-end pocket, and sometimes they get trapped or pinched, and that causes diverticulitis, and they can rupture, kind of like the appendix can rupture, especially if they get little fecaliths or things in them. Usually older individuals will develop diverticulitis. All right, one of the other things to recognize, we talked about the greater omentum and the lesser omentum when we talked about them hanging off of the stomach. So the stomach will be sitting here, hanging off of the greater curvature is an omentum called the greater omentum. So if you see this fatty looking stuff, that's omentum. Off of the lesser curvature, there's an omentum that goes over to the liver, but you usually don't see those in models. Omentum is different from mesentery. Mesentery is a connective tissue that the blood vessels and the nerves run through. Remember the superior mesenteric artery and the inferior mesenteric artery?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the superior mesenteric artery carries the arteries that run through the small intestines to the small intestines. The inferior mesenteric artery runs through this lower portion of mesentery to the large intestines. So please be able to identify that distinction.
Is that only in the digestive system?
Mesenteries
Kinda holds
and
everything together.
omentums, yeah.